The king had just heard how one small mistake almost cost so many people their lives. But not every story starts with chaos. Some start with a trade, a busy market, and money that sits waiting too long. Sometimes a simple choice can go terribly wrong and change everything in an instant. I'm Al-Hakawati, the legendary storyteller, and tonight we follow the broker's tale. The broker said he came to these lands as a trader, brought here by fate. He was born in Cairo, and his dad was a broker. When the father died, he took over the business. One day, while sitting at his usual spot, a young man showed up. He was well dressed. Out of respect, the broker stood up to greet him. The young man showed him a small sample of sesame and asked its value. He gave the current market price. The man told him to get some helpers to carry the bags and meet him later. Then he left. The broker went to the buyers, got a higher price than expected, hired 4 porters, and went to the place he was told. The young man opened the storeroom. There was sesame everywhere, worth 5,000 dirhams. He allowed the broker to take his fee and asked him to hold the rest of the money until later. The broker agreed and left, having made a good profit. For months, the young man came to collect the money, but each time he delayed taking it. The broker began to think of him as unusually generous. Eventually, the man returned, dressed even more finely, and still delayed taking the money. At the end of the year, the broker invited him to eat. The man agreed, but only if the cost came out of the money he had left with the broker. Food was prepared and shared. During the meal, the broker noticed the young man ate with his left hand. That surprised him. Afterward, the man explained his right hand had been cut off and that his story was unusual. At that point, he began to tell it. He stayed in Cairo, living well and following the same routine. Money from sales would come in each month. On Mondays and Tuesdays, he went to the covered market to collect payments from merchants. He counted the money, sealed it, and took it back to the Khan. That's where traveling merchants stayed. One Monday, after visiting the baths, he returned to his room, ate, drank, and fell asleep. When he woke, he went to the market and stopped at a merchant's shop he knew. A woman came in, confident and striking. She looked at some goods, and he couldn't stop looking at her. She picked a fine piece of silk he had sold to the merchant. She wanted to pay later, but the merchant hesitated since the young man still had a share. So the young man stepped in, paid it himself, let the merchant keep the profit, and handed the silk to her. He then asked to look at her more closely. When their eyes met, he became completely captivated. And if you are captivated too, the subscribe button is right there. She left soon after. He stayed in the market until late, unable to think about anything else. Before leaving, he asked the merchant about her and found out she was rich and independent. He went back to the Khan that night, but couldn't eat or sleep. By morning, he tried to eat and drink a little, then returned to the merchant's shop. The woman appeared again, dressed richly, with a maid. She handed him the money for the silk. They talked for a while. His intentions were clear. She noticed that, then left quickly. He followed her, met her near the money changer, and they agreed to meet privately at her house the next day. After that, he went back to his lodging and spent the night sleepless. At dawn, he prepared money for expenses, hired a cart, and went to her house. He was led inside by 2 attendants into a large hall with doors and window overlooking a garden, water flowing through, and rich furnishings. He waited there, and the woman welcomed him warmly. They ate together and stayed until nightfall. Before leaving, he gave her money and returned to the Khan. Every evening, he went to see her, and every morning he left money. Slowly, his wealth started to run out. Eventually, he woke one morning with nothing left, no money at all, and wandered through the streets until he reached a main gate where a crowd had gathered. In the chaos, his hand brushed against a soldier's pocket. He felt a purse and took it without thinking. The soldier noticed at once, struck him, and knocked him to the ground. People crowded around and started arguing, and then the city guards arrived. The soldier said the young man had stolen a blue purse with 20 dinars. The governor asked if anyone had helped him, and the soldier said no. So the governor told his police chief to seize him. They searched him, and sure enough, the purse was there. The governor counted the money. It matched the soldier's claim. The young man admitted he had taken it, and the witnesses confirmed it. The governor ordered the executioner to cut off his right hand. The soldier felt pity and spoke up, so the governor didn't punish him further. Someone gave him a drink, and the soldier returned the purse before leaving. The young man wrapped his injured arm under his clothes and hid it from sight. Then unsteadily, he walked to the woman's house. He collapsed onto the bed. At first, he refused food, but later he drank with his left hand and fell asleep. While he slept, the woman discovered his missing right hand and the purse with the gold. She was deeply distressed until morning. When he woke, food and drink were ready. He ate and got ready to leave, but she stopped him. She understood that he'd spent all his wealth and lost his hand because of what had happened. She called witnesses and drew up a marriage contract. She said she had already received her settlement and transferred all her wealth, her servants, and her property to him. The witnesses recorded it and left. She took him to a closet and opened a big chest full of little bags of coins. Each one had 50 dinars, all the money he had given her. She said it was his money back, that now he was rich, and that losing his hand couldn't be fixed. She told him to take care of it. He put it together with what he already had and felt a wave of relief and happiness. She stayed with him that night, worried about him, while he told her everything that had happened. Less than a month later, she fell very ill and died after 50 days. He took care of her funeral, buried her, and gave out some money to help the poor. Later, he found out she had left behind a huge amount of money, properties, and storehouses, one full of sesame. He sold some of it and had been busy selling the rest, which delayed him from settling accounts with the others. He gave some of the sesame money to the broker and explained why his right hand had been cut off and why he now ate with his left. Later, the young man asked the broker if he would travel with him to his country. He had bought trade goods from Cairo and Alexandria and wanted the broker to come along. The broker agreed. At the beginning of the next month, he sold everything he owned and used the money to buy more goods. Then the two of them traveled together. When they arrived, the young man sold his goods, bought new stock, and returned to Egypt. The broker stayed behind. That is how the broker found himself here that night, after the events of the hunchback, now present as a stranger when all this happened. The broker then turned to the king and said that this story was surely stranger than the story of the hunchback. The king replied that it was not, and that he would still have them all executed. At that moment, the king's inspector stepped forward. He asked the king for permission to speak. He said he would tell what had happened to him just before he found the hunchback. He asked that if his story turned out to be more remarkable than the one before it, the king would spare all their lives, and the king agreed. That is how it happened. The young man kept spending his money without thinking. day after day, until there was nothing left. When that moment came, he did something he never imagined he would do. And from that single act, everything else followed. The king stayed where he was, waiting for the next tale. Now tell me, if you were in the young man's place, when would you have stopped? I'd like to hear your thoughts.